Hi, my name is Juhi, and I'm really passionate about network automation. It is said that in the age of networking, automation is the nervous system of the organization. So today I've got with me Mr. Gary Woodward, and we'll be discussing why should we learn Golang and what benefits does it offer over other programming languages such as Python. I mean, if you talk about me, I have been learning Python, or I've been working on Python for the past 4 5 years. I've used tools such as Ansible, PyATS, Nonir, and a few other tools. And these days, I've just started hearing talks about, the future of Golang, and Golang is really cool and stuff like that. So I'm sure, like me, many of you are in the same boat as well, trying to decide why should we learn Go? And that is the whole point of this session today. So Gary, hello, welcome to this call, and thank you
Hi,
so
Jude.
much. Hi, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Pleasure to be here with you.
Likewise, thank you very much. So, Gary, for network engineers like me who have recently started their automation journey, and they have familiarized themselves with Python, but now why Go at this stage? Why? I mean, what are the benefits? Could you please
Okay.
talk about it? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's some fantastic benefits with Python and using Python for network automation. I'd say that's quite mainstream. I think in terms of network automation, it's probably Python is the go-to language, um, mainly because of its ease of use, and adoptability is very easy with Python in terms of getting into it and learning it. And I think that's a huge benefit to Python. So the first thing I would say is Python is a great language, and you should continue using Python for network automation. But also, it's worth considering Golang, because that also has a large number of merits associated with it for network automation. I think if I start with what I think are the benefits for Golang, I would say the first one would be ease of deployment. Now, this could be a moot point for you, depends on your organization. But if you want to deploy Python applications, for example, you're going to need to install Python on a server somewhere, either locally or in the cloud, or somewhere. And that might be a challenge if you've got to go to your IT department and ask them to do it, or there might be some sort of organizational challenges to just rocking up and installing Python and all the apps that you want to install. So with Go, it compiles into a binary, a single binary. So it makes it really easy to deploy on different operating systems, be they Linux or Windows or Mac, etc. So it's really kind of adaptable because it
Mhm.
all compiles into a binary.
I see. Mhm.
Um, and I think that is probably one of the biggest sort of draws for using Go, is the ease of deployment for cloud as well. These are kind of big pluses, I think, for Go.
I
Um,
think you were mentioning the other day that these container technologies like Kubernetes is written in
mhm.
Golang as well.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. There are kind of many apps, cloud apps out there that are written in Go. Um, and
And
if you,
Go was, sorry to interrupt you, Go was written by Google employees. Is that correct? And it has
yeah,
been around for a decade or so in the industry.
absolutely. Yeah. It was. I think what the authors did is they looked at the sort of the existing programming languages and thought, let's try and do the best of all worlds and bring something together that kind of addresses some of the issues that you get with Python and also C. There's things like garbage collection in Go, which is really,
What
really
is
useful.
garbage collection? This is new to me. I've not heard it. What all garbage collection I know of is the bins I collect every day from my home. What is it?
it,
Please throw
it,
some light on it. Yeah.
it's taking care of the memory allocations,
Hmm.
and that side of it. In Python you wouldn't see that anyway. That's all
Yeah.
kind of under the hood.
Mm.
But in other languages that's something you need to manage, and in Go they've got this thing called the garbage collector which deals with all that, so
Okay.
releasing memory back into into your system and things like that. So it's kind
Mm.
of, that's really, really useful.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more low level than Python as well, because a lot more to kind of think about.
Mhm.
So not half as much is abstracted away from you as with Python. Python,
Mm.
you are abstracted away from lots of detail, which is good because you don't really want to be worried about those things when you're learning something
Sure, sure.
new.
Mm.
But then as you go a step further, you think, well, actually, it'd be good to know, to
Mm.
actually go a little bit deeper and actually understand those things, and and how those things work in practice.
Sure.
So I think Go's got some big benefits there. The other big benefit is concurrency and speed.
Hmm.
So it's absolutely awesome in terms of performance. It performs really, really well, and mainly because it compiles into a binary, into a C binary. So it's super fast.
Okay.
It's a compiled language, not an interpreted language. So there's obviously a speed benefit there, and the
Hmm.
concurrency is, you can sort of spawn multiple concurrent, threads to achieve things, which makes it very, very efficient. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, it's really good. I think also the entry point into Go is another big advantage, because it's kind of in between. I'd say it's like moderate difficulty. Like Python is probably on the easier scale, and
Hmm.
Go is on a moderate difficulty, and then say C++, Rust are kind of super hard to to kind of grasp and get involved with. So it
So
kind of,
yeah, so I did C++ plus plus during my engineering days. That was many moons ago, and I've recently learned Python. So you're saying it is somewhere in the middle.
yes,
So that's encouraging for me. It will not be very hard for me, so that's good. I will try. So Gary, have you got any script that you can show us? Because I know
yeah,
a bit of Python and
yeah,
drawing analogies with Python terms. Could you just run through us a script in Go? Thank you.
yeah. I've got a really simple example which I prepared earlier for this.
Mm.
Um, you will need to switch on the screen sharing
Sure.
option
Okay.
because it's disabled at the moment. But I'll just show you one of my sandboxes that I've just set up for this session.
Hmm.
Let's see if I can run through a few basic details.
Sure.
Okay, okay, you're sharing the screen at the moment, G. So just if you could,
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. It says multiple participants. Yeah, so I click the option which says multiple participants can share. Are you able to
okay,
share now?
let me just try it. Uh, oh yes, I can now. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's fine.
great.
So let me just share my screen. Don't know if you can see that at all.
Not yet. Mm-mm-mm. No, Gary, we're not able to see anything yet.
Oh, it says my screen share is loading, so we might need to,
Sure.
let me just, let me stop it and reshare it.
Okay.
Few
Sure.
technical difficulties there.
Yeah, always
Uh,
there.
so let's do that again.
Yes, we can see it now. Finally. Good.
Great, great,
It's
great, great.
always good when technology works. That's good. Good.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is a really simple piece of code just to do some hello world type stuff. So the first thing you notice about Go is you've got this thing called package main, and in Go, it's pretty much all about packages and defining packages.
Packages are nothing but modules in Python. Is that right? Like different.
No, it's kind of like there's no object orientated concept within Go. So
Okay.
you don't have classes and things like that. So this is package main is like, generally speaking, the main package that you work in. But if you wanted to create a module, let's say, and you want to import that, you could create a new package.
Okay.
And that's the whole idea of Go, is that you create these mini packages and you import them.
Okay.
And then you can reuse them over and over again.
I
And so
see.
one of the other differences here, actually, which I've just come to my mind, is, like Python's got a PyPy package manager
Yes.
where you pip install things. With
Mm,
Go, there is no PyPy equivalent, because all the packages, generally speaking, have like a URL to a GitHub
I see.
repo. So
Mm.
instead of having to like do a pip install, you're just actually pointing at a GitHub
Is it like
URL.
a Git clone
Yeah, kind
from
of.
the
Yeah,
URL?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Because if you've got the GitHub URL, then you don't need to specify, anything else, because it just goes off and basically, as you say, clones that
Mm.
package into your
Local directory,
program.
working directory. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. So for this one, we've got package main.
Package manager.
We're
So
doing
how would you describe package in your words? If it's not object oriented, what is a package in Golang? How would you, in Gary's words, how would you
in,
define it?
in my words, it's a kind of definition of a set of code that all have a common package name. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you want to bring in other bits of code from other packages, you just import those packages.
Is it like a role in Ansible?
No, I wouldn't say it's like a role. I think it's like in Python, where you've got a package, let's say like an SSH library, let's say,
Okay.
and there's a package, let's call it, the package is called SSH.
Mm-hmm.
You would just do, in Python, you would import that package using something like import SSH or import Paramiko, or whatever package it is.
Mm-hmm.
And all the code for, say, Paramiko would be contained within that package. So here it's just exactly the same, really. You're
Okay.
building, it's like building Lego bricks, really, I'd say. It's like
Mm-hmm.
almost having all these Lego bricks and then pulling them in when you need them.
I
Now,
see. Mm-hmm.
the sort of question would be is why function main obviously is what's going to get run on this in this code, but sort of the obvious question is, why not just put everything into the main function? And
Mm.
there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, you wouldn't want to put everything into main,
Yeah.
because you can't test what's in main. So Go has a testing package,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever's in main cannot be tested through that tested package. So you want to
Mm.
build it up as separate functions, dedicated functions, ideally.
Yeah, it's for modularity, right? We talk about modularity in a code. It's always good to split it into modules so that you can unit test it and whatever.
Absolutely. And that's what Go's kind of principle is. So the idea of functions in Go are that they do one thing and one thing only.
Mm-hmm.
So, unlike Python, I guess you could just have this one big script that does 10 different things. And you could
Mm-hmm.
do the same in Go, but the principle is not to do that. The principle is to kind of split it up into different functions,
Mm-hmm.
and even in necessary different packages. So all of that code becomes reusable, and it also becomes testable, because there's a lot of focus around testing within Go. There is in Python as well, but I think that's kind of one of the sort of maybe the differences. And the other thing as well about Go is the error handling as well. You have to do a lot more defensive error handling than you do in Python.
Oh.
So it's built from the ground up to handle errors.
Mm-hmm.
So in Python, you kind of sometimes you just do you would do it like a try except for errors,
Yeah.
um, and sort of try and work out what the errors might be that you're going to come across, and capture those. But with Go, you need to know what those errors are pretty much up front, or else what will happen is you'll get this thing called a panic, which is just
Not a
means
panic attack, is it?
it's kind of like, I like the term actually. It kind of makes me
Yeah.
smile. The program's going to panic, and
Hmm.
that just means that an error has occurred, and we don't know what, we're not expecting this error. We don't even know what it is, but it's just
Hmm.
panicked.
I
And you
see.
don't want that, because there's another emphasis with Go on user experience, which is making sure the users don't see a panic message would be a
Oh,
good thing. In Python, I think sometimes, especially when we're doing network automation, we're not so concerned about the errors. We kind of, oh, there's an error message,
hmm.
fine.
Hmm.
But I think with Go, it's a little bit more precise, where you want to know what those errors are going to be,
Hmm.
and you're kind of really concerned about the user experience, that they don't see the bad error messages that
Oh,
scare them. So
yeah.
if they see a panic, it's like, oh, you've missed
Something
something
bad
there.
has happened on the network. Yeah. So, that import IPDB tool that has been a
Mm.
savior in troubleshooting all the Python scripts, because it takes you behind the scenes and you can see step by step what's exactly happening in your script. Do you have
Yeah,
anything similar for Golang?
there is something similar, although the sort of principle in Go is more. Most people use print statements,
Oh,
um,
so
but
print
the
this
problem,
variable or print the output.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. But I think the idea of Go is that you don't end up in a position where you're kind of doing that, and
Hmm.
especially if you're going to do that in production, that's going to be really tricky, because your code could be live, let's say, in a production network, and you wouldn't want to be switching on the debugger. So I think, in Python, we're a bit more sort of easy going around debugging. We
Hmm.
just switch on the PDB and sort of figure it out a little bit as we go. I
Yeah,
think with Go, because it's a strictly typed language, you kind of should already know what to expect from those variables, and you should know what they are,
I see.
basically,
Okay.
before defining them. And that's where the error handling comes in, because obviously if something doesn't work, there's
Hmm.
normally an error handler there to pick that up and say, this is not what you expected. Um, and so that's the kind of general way of troubleshooting, but you can use
Sure.
print statements.
Print statements are good. So the other thing, so you've tried everything that you know from your knowledge about that tool. The next best thing to do is, you Google the error that you get.
Yes.
And for tools such as Ansible, I've seen that the community support is so massive that there's a very good chance that someone else on this planet has got that error that you are struggling with. So is that the case with Golang, or is the community still developing?
I know
Community support.
it's a really great community, and you get lots of support and lots of help there. So, um, no, it's a massive community.
Hmm.
Um, it really is, and super helpful to beginners and people and novices. So, from that perspective, I don't think there's an issue. Um, there isn't there isn't a problem with learning this. I think if you've learned Python, I think you could get on page with it within about 6 weeks.
Hmm.
Just not like, obviously, expert level, but you
Sure.
can do a conversion between Python and Golang in about sort of, just to get 1 foot or 2 feet on the ladder within about
Hmm.
6 to 8 weeks, I think, because a lot of the concepts are very, very similar, and there are some bits that are completely different.
Hmm.
What I think is one of the big benefits of learning Go is it will make you a better programmer in Python, I think, because of the
Hmm.
structure and the things that you see in Python that you will never see in Go. And you think, okay, now I'm going to take that really useful snippet, like the error handling and things like that, and take
Hmm.
that back to Python coding, and you will improve a lot with your Python coding. So that's another little I think, side bonus of learning Golang. It will
Sure.
start to evolve your overall sort of skills across both languages.
Cool. Awesome. So let's just, so we've only just talked about the first line. So let's just
Yeah,
go through the script. That's good. That's great
yeah,
insight, Gary. Yeah.
excellent. So you've got like the next slide is an import statement. So here you're going to import all your packages that you need. Now,
Mm-hmm.
one thing you'll notice here is that just to print something on the screen, we've got to import a package. Now in Python, we wouldn't need to do that. We'd use the print
Yeah.
method, and that's inbuilt. We don't need to import anything for print. But in Go, it is a standard library, so it's built in as a standard library, but we need to specifically import it.
Mm-hmm.
And
FMT, what does it mean? FMT. It looks like, sounds like an abbreviation to me. FMT.
that's a really good question. um, you know what? I don't know what the three letters mean. I'll be
Don't
honest.
worry. Yeah, I'll just, yeah, I'm sure I'll
I,
just.
obviously it's used for all the print statements, log statements, error handling. So it's a package, standard library within Go. I actually, yeah, I don't even know what the three letters
That's
actually
fine.
stand
That's
for.
fine. FMT.
Yeah,
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I'm sure we'll find out at some point.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's so something, I'm so used to doing printing things. I just print this, print that, error, you know,
Mm-hmm.
FMT format. I think it actually
Format.
means format for short.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a three-letter acronym. I think it just means format, but yeah, I could be wrong. Um, so then you've got like you've got this strut that I've defined, and struts are data types.
What? Strut. What did you say?
Struts.
Structure. So short form for structure, is it?
Correct. Yeah, sort for
Correct.
structures. So
Strut.
this is your data types. It's kind of
Struck.
it
Yeah, got
could
it.
be similar to a class, but it's not object orientated. But it's a way of handling data.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for this is kind of like you're saying, this is what I expect my data to look like. Um, so rather than, you know, define some data, what you're doing here is saying, this is, when I've got this router strut, this is what I'm expecting the router strut to contain. This is the data that I want to see. I've got IP address, which is a string. I've got hostname, which is a string, and I've got vendor, which is a string. And so that's just defining the type of data. So, I
Mm-hmm.
want a string there, I want a string, and I want a string.
Mm.
I could add another field here and it could be an integer.
Like a router status could be a boolean, like if it's a router is up or it's down,
Yep,
like a boolean value. So
yep,
this structure basically reminds me of that Yang data models that
yep,
describes, the common features of interface, IP address, status, and description, and type, and stuff like that. Yeah, sure.
yep. It's like a schema, like you say, like a Yang model is a schema. And this is kind of a schema as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it just means that, like, in Python, where you would be, let's say, you've got a Python dictionary with a load of data. Well, what you would do here is you would take that dictionary, or it's called a map actually in Go, or hash table, some people call it. But you would take that data and you would map that into this struct, and then you'd make sure the fields that you're expecting to see match what's in the struct.
I
And
see.
so you're saying, this is what I want and this is what I got. It's a bit different to the way in Python you would just take, unless you did some validation of that data
Mm.
using something like Pydantic or something like that, you would get whatever you would get, and you'd have to kind of manage you know, the errors or the data being incorrect. You'd have to find a way to do that. Whereas with Go, it doesn't force you down this route, but it almost forces you into this kind of way of thinking, which
Mm.
is where you're defining what you want to see up front.
Tell me
before you
one
get.
thing, please correct me if I'm wrong. Is it like parsing the data when when we get the raw CLI output from any device for that matter, and when we cherry pick certain information from that output, we parse that data. We either
Yes,
do it. Is it is it similar to parsing the data and beforehand you're just defining the template of the output like you do it with Ginger templates?
correct. Yes, that's right. Because what you do on these on here is on these structs is you define tags, and what you can say is like, right, so if I've got a JSON tag,
Mm,
I'd have something like this. I'd have like JSON colon, and then I'd say what is the key that I'm expecting from JSON
mm,
that represents IP address, and it might actually be just IP address.
mhm,
Um, and then I've defined a tag for that. So when I take some JSON data, let's say
mm,
I've gone to a router and I've pulled off some data that represents this,
mm,
and now I want to bring that into this struct. It's called marshalling. It's
mhm.
marshalling the data in
Mm.
from JSON into the struct. Then what I need is these tags.
I
Um,
see.
so it will go into that, into that JSON. It will look for this tag IP
Mhm,
address,
mhm,
and it will map that into this struct.
mhm.
So your data ends up in the struct basically.
I
And then if
see.
you want to drop that into YAML,
Mm,
you could have another tag here
mm,
that had like YAML
mm.
colon, and
So
then
this to me feels like, when we use Ansible or Python or Ansible for that matter. So
yep,
step one is to get raw CLI output. Step two is to get the parsed output. Step
mm-hmm,
three is when you pass your output through a filter to convert it
yep,
either into a nice YAML or to a nice JSON format. I think this is somewhere along the lines of step three when you're telling it that, listen, I want my data to be in this format, in this
that
particular format.
yes. So it's very, very predictable by doing that, and it's
Mm,
safe. So you're not going to get, like in Python, um, you try and access a key in Python
mm,
that doesn't exist, you're going to get a key error.
yeah.
You will never see a key error with Go, not because obviously there is no concept of a key error, but it's because you defined this structure up front. This is what I want,
Got
and
it.
if there's a tag if there's some in that JSON output, if there's something in there that I'm not interested in,
Mm-hmm.
then it just doesn't get serialized into the struct. It just gets ignored and left off.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do things like omit as well. So you can do things like with a tag, with a dash. You can do something like this. You can say dash like that type of thing, and that will
Oh,
just say ignore that field. Don't serialize that field
oh.
from JSON. There might be a
So
reason for doing that.
yeah, because this reminds me, remember we used that templating language. I can't remember. We define a template on a notepad. And if we know
Mhm.
that for certain keys, there won't be an output, we have to draw a dash for not applicable.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it gives an error.
yeah.
Otherwise
So
it
you
will
won't
just,
get that. You won't get that error. And also, you can do something called omit empty as well on a tag, which says if that um,
field is
if
empty.
field is not there, then just ignore. Don't include it basically.
Hmm.
Otherwise, what you end up with if you don't have omit empty, you've got loads of data. You've got all these fields in the strut
Mhm.
that end up with these empty uh, curly braces.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just end up with lots of things that aren't there because it
Hmm.
will just serialize whatever you tell it to serialize.
Got
So
it. Got it. So, Gary, sorry to interrupt you. I'm just conscious we are about to run out. We've only got just 5 minutes left. So, what we'll do is we'll wrap up this part one of our conversation on why and why should we learn Golang. So, it was lovely talking to you. Thank you very much
great.
for your time. And it was very useful. and I've definitely learned a lot of new things about Golang today. So let's just continue our conversation in part 2. So see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dewey.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.